then the mulch they shipped in had them in there.
Along the river. It's
And
called
so we had to
Full House.
spray the
10 years
stuff
old, the
around
bridge
it.
next
Oh,
door.
I got you.
1898.
Yeah, we've been
This was
fighting
built full house
armyworm
for
for
the
about 2 years
So you got union stockyards, they needed a giant freezer, a cold storage warehouse for all that inventory. So it has built no windows originally, 4-foot thick walls, which you can kind of see with the balconies today. Originally stuffed the walls here with a mixture of horsehair and cork as insulation. Then in the 80s, they're reimagining condos. And condos, when I mention that word, people say, how much? Which is a natural curiosity. It's really hard to talk about, though. It's complicated in any major city. The best I can do is kind of give you a range for downtown along the river specifically. That's all we're talking about here, right? Along the river. So in Marina City, I found a small convertible studio with original appliances from the 60s. About $225,000. This is about 2-3 years ago, so I might need to update this. Get a bigger place, better view, better location, head on up, price goes up. For a townhome, tack on a 0 and you'll be in the ballpark. $2 million, give or take, upwards of about 7 or 8. $18 million for the newest penthouse in the St. Regis that sold last year. So if you'd like to buy downtown along the river, expect to spend somewhere between $200,000 and $18 million. Sorry, I can't be more helpful. If you're feeling bad about yourself regardless, as I often do after saying that, it's okay. I've planned for this, and we got a beautiful view back down the main branch to cheer us up. Becoming a little bit lesser known nowadays, but one of my favorites, back down the canyon of the main branch. And then we're going to go to the right, past River Point, and on over to that understandably eye-catching martini glass-shaped foundation on 150 North Riverside. Only utilizing 20% of its lot area for its foundation, which is already pretty small, the lot area here. 70%, give or take, of course, of this building is built above air. And then, gravity comes into play. And that's why people look at it the way they do. All that mass compounded needs to go somewhere. The double cantilever redistributes.
We're going under.
Mass, that's the wedge shape, down into the core of the building, right? Which also functions as the foundation as well as the elevator banks, as you'll see as we come underneath. From there, giant concrete and steel piers are drilled 120 feet down into bedrock, firmly fixing into the earth. It's impressive engineering, but not my favorite part. If you want to see my favorite part, look up into our reflection. That's us right there. Easily my favorite part. Yeah, sure, yeah, give yourself a wave. That's good. I like that. How do you look? Also, they found a bit of an issue when it came to wind and sway here that they had to deal with. So they installed 160,000 gallons worth of water tanks inside the top of the building that fill and unfill with water as the winds pick up and die down. It's called a tuned inertial slosh damper. Think of it this way though. If the building would move to the point where you would get seasick at your desk, the tanks fill up partially, not fully, with water, so that if the winds push the building in one direction, the tanks, which are fixed, they'll go with it. The water not fixed to anything instead sloshes inside the tanks and encourages the structure to its upright position, reducing vibration. Worked out well because those same architects started this project as that one finished up. 110 North Wacker was completed in 2020, largest for Bank of America. Another example of a piece of engineering drawing your eye not to the top but to the base of the structure with these kind of inverted trusses. Interesting images from passengers that have come before you. I've heard tridents, scorps, and chicken feet, which was a good reminder to me that art is a two-way street. Right? The architect can bring all the intention they want to it, but you bring yourself and your own way of seeing things to the table. On the other side, dueling Art Deco. Both of these buildings are from 1929. Both of them are Art Deco. So they have a lot in common, these two. Remember the limestone siding and vertical lines that we just saw at the Merchandise Mart. To the right is a massive riverside plaza. To the left, no. Same here. One of them had to be strange, and it was the Riverside Plaza back then, because back in 1929, and for most of our history,
There's the Chicago water taxi.
Our sewer for pretty much everything. We don't have to get into the details. It's just worse than you imagine. Trust me, I used to talk about the details, but it's a nice day, so we're going to skip that part, right? And instead, we're going to talk about what's happening today. Today, if you're a private building and you want to go along the river, that's great, but you must account for a river walker plaza in that design. It was kind of seen as a punishment in the 90s, but was one of those things that got the ball rolling, and the reason all of those property values have skyrocketed today. We're going to stay right for the next 3 buildings coming up here. Technically, these next 4 buildings, it's like somebody ripped a timeline out of a history book and had it built in real life, all designed by the legendary architecture firm Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. The 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. I think it's really very cool. Starting off with black box modernism in the 60s. I think more context is needed to understand modernism in the 60s in Chicago. This was brand new. Floor-to-ceiling windows were brand new in your office building, right? This was a niche style in a couple of cities, right? All of the tech workers that have this swing in their step, they go to their office building at Wolf Point, they brag to all their friends into that building at Wolf Point, and you want to work there. That's exactly what people would say if you worked in this building in the 60s. It was a status symbol. Something that's been helpful in recent years, some people call it the Mad Men era of architecture. If you're familiar with that TV show, it's a decent jumping off for its time. In the 70s, we get something new. A white box. Now, I know how that sounds, but it's not just modernism. You can certainly make the argument academically. We don't call the white box modernism for 2 reasons. The first is obvious. White or gray stone became acceptable on your glass and steel frame. The other, modernism was popular in a handful of cities in the 60s. Where was modernism popular in the 70s? Every city that existed on the planet Earth in the 70s, that's where. This was going on in droves, all led by Mies van der Rohe right here in Chicago. Our first global trend we call the white box international style. Then in the 80s, maybe a bigger page turn. Curving green glass is contextualism. This time, not tipping its cap to the height of another building, but the upcoming curve and color of the river. So finding an inspiration nearby, just a different one. Which kind of leads to this mural across the way. I didn't talk about this building really, and then about 7 years ago, the owner commissions an artist to do a mural on it. Sure, it's a point where the owner is sitting down with the artist saying, listen, William isn't mentioning us on his tours anymore. We gotta shake things up. Clearly, we need something that'll put us back on the map again. If I haven't bought you enough time to figure it out, it's just a giant "You Are Here" map painted on the side of the building. Right here, take a look at this building. You are here. That's it. 0 negative reviews in 7 years. One of the best received in city history. Everybody from hoity-toity architecture critics down to everything. Then we're gonna go right. This is kind of a crowd pleaser too. If you're a fan of The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger as the Joker, the opening scene where the Joker's henchman busts a window and zip lines across a busy Gotham street onto the top of Gotham City Bank. It was frontiered. This is maybe a little less exciting than Gotham City Bank. This is Chicago's old post office. The largest post office ever built. Kind of cool. We needed it in the 20s and 30s. We moved out in 1996, and then it sat vacant and falling apart. And then it sat vacant and falling apart. I'm not done. And then it sat vacant and falling apart until 2016. And now you're looking at the finishing touches of a 5-year, $900 million redevelopment. Near $1 billion. Uber, Lyft, Uber, Home Chef, Walgreens, Pepsi, massive headquarters have relocated here. I grew up calling it Chicago's haunted house. It fell apart for 20 years, and now it's beautiful, which is good. I like it. They did a great job saving the history in many ways. I just don't know how to talk about it yet because I got so used to being disappointed. There was a moment right when they had put up construction fencing in 2016, and I was on one of these boats, and I used to introduce it. I said, let me introduce you to Chicago's largest haunted house. And as I said that, 3 bricks fell off the side of the building. And now it's beautiful, which is good. It's just different. And I think that's kind of the theme of the South Branch as of late. Because the same can be said of this neighborhood here to our left called Printers Row. Like it's his nickname for the large mail order catalog printers in the early 1900s. About the reason we needed the world's largest post office. Nowadays, we're seeing a lot of tall residential development with some exceptions, but most of the really tall stuff here in front of us comes from the last decade or so. An exception or two there. In fact, just 3 years ago, this was a vacant lot with a seawall 15 feet high and a line of trees, so I couldn't talk about much other than the new post office, which, you know, there is stuff to talk about, but limited runway, architecturally speaking, does its job. That's true. And now, we have an unobstructed view, 2 brand new rental buildings that just broke ground on a third of 5. And this Riverwalk is now having its 2nd birthday this month. This is brand new, and I want to be a little bit more clear here that this Riverwalk, I think it's really nice, embracing the natural ecology and all that, but this is the first time in city history ever a private company once has so much put as a dime into the South Branch of the river, let alone a multi-million-dollar riverwalk. The first time ever here. And, you know, it's nice, but I think maybe we'll look back on it 2 years from now and see it as a turning point that we're in the midst of right now, hopefully, where the relationship between the city and the river really started to change for the better. And like I said, we got a new foundation starting here to our left on the tallest tower yet. All of it's joining these guys, though. Older concrete Jetsons residences from our friend Bertrand Goldberg, who you might remember from his Marina City corn jobs on the main branch. This one comes about 20 years later, 1986. River City. Not everybody likes the curved concrete, that's true, but that city within a city has really become the standard today. All of the new buildings going up around it, what do they offer? What do they advertise? Rooftop gardens, pools, fitness centers, chef stations, movie rooms,
Shoreline,
restaurants,
another shoreline boat.
Every one of them. I actually had a guy validate me the other day. He got off the boat. He said, "Yeah, I just signed a new lease." I was looking at a bunch of new buildings. I really liked one, but they didn't have a golf simulator room, so I went to the 3 other new ones that did. This is the era we're living in, right? In many ways, especially in the luxury market, of course. But Bertrand Goldberg, he was doing it far before we had the data to back it up. Today, it's a lot easier to study where and how people live. And we've discovered there's one commonality among the most livable cities, right, where people are regularly feeling happier, healthier, and more optimistic than the rest of them. They don't share cultures, they don't share climates, they share that they're the most walkable cities in the world. I don't think I could predict that, and certainly Bertrand Goldberg didn't have the data, but he had this anthropological understanding, something that all architects have to kind of grapple with. He said, what's luxury in Chicago in the 60s, a city where it's regularly negative 30 degrees in January? You need a gallon of milk on that really cold day? Come live with me. You won't even have to think of good thing, unless you really want to. Worked out well for him. Well into the history books. Then we're going to go right. This old power plant. It's been vacant for about a decade and they phased it out beforehand, so it's had a number of years of decay. And I've actually been using it kind of as a benchmark. This is essentially what the old post office looked like in 2016. Helps us appreciate what was able to be saved. I actually used to not like it at all. I thought it was distracting, and of course as soon as they announced that they're going to tear it down, I love it now. Which I know how predictable that is, but especially in the last 2 years, if you're visiting Chicago for the first time, all you're seeing is beautiful riverwalks. And this is one of the last images I have to show you that city of broad shoulders that made us the city we are today, right, where industry reigns supreme on the South Branch. Cool timepiece for the time being. Whenever we get turned around, we're getting turned around on the South Branch. People will ask what's down there, which is a fun and hilariously open-ended question. In about 3/4 mile down the river, we hit Pingtown Park in Chinatown, which is one of the first public investments in the South Branch. One of our captains got married there 2 years ago. It's really lovely. It's a beautiful afternoon down there.